Hello everyone and welcome back to the Down to the Wire podcast. First episode of 2021, episode 9. 9 episodes in. Thank you for joining us. If you've been here before, it's great to have you back listening. If you're new, thanks for listening for the first time. And we hope you enjoy. How are you doing, Jack?
I am great. Yeah, I was going to say Chiefs win again, but they didn't. But I don't care because they got the number one seed. Yeah, it's just... I'm happy with it.
There we are. Right, I say slightly different. It's not really that different. We're going to be talking about some of our hopes for sport this year. Obviously, it's a new year. Got a couple of exciting things coming up sports-wise this year.
Yeah, Olympics
we're also
and a Euros.
Oh, yeah. Gosh, I forgot about the Olympics. Oh, and the Euros as well. It's going to be a bumper summer, isn't it?
Stuff, isn't it, this year?
Wow.
I can't remember the others.
I mean, this is assuming that everything goes ahead as planned, which in the current time is not a given, but hopefully we can cross our fingers. We're going to be talking about some of our predictions for the year as well. Perhaps some of them a bit more radical than others, and perhaps maybe not so much predictions, but things that we think are going to shock. So we'll see how that goes, and then obviously we'll do our usual weekly roundup of all of the sporting goodness that's happened in the past week.
Sounds good.
Ready to crack on?
I am.
Good stuff. Right. So we'll start off then. Hopes for the year in terms of sport, like we just said. Lots of interesting things coming up this year. So we've we've both got a couple of things each that we're probably looking forward to. Shall I go first with the first one? We'll kind of alternate back and forth, right?
Sounds good.
Okay. Right, I'll go first then. Lions tour. Now, we've talked about rugby a little bit on this podcast, but I don't know about you, Jack, but I absolutely love the Lions tour. I don't know, there's something just very unique about it. You don't really see it. I
probably would like it if it wasn't so early in the morning, because I think I've ever watched a game of it. Purely, I don't mind watching the Six Nations, but the Lions tour, it's like, oh, okay, that's interesting. People getting picked, and all that. But
well, perhaps this could be the year, Jack, where you get invested in the Lions tour. I mean, I guess the first hope I should say is that it goes ahead. As in, I'm pretty sure South Africa haven't competed in the Rugby Championship this year, which is like the Southern Hemisphere equivalent of the Six Nations. Because of COVID, I believe they were discussing it this week.
As to where it will be, or whether it will be in South Africa?
Well, I'd imagine as to whether it'll... I don't know, actually. I mean, because they normally run on every 4 years they do a Lions tour, for those who don't know. And it runs on a rotation of South Africa, Australia, New Zealand. And it goes in that cycle every third tour. It comes back around. So the Lions will be in South Africa this time, having drawn with New Zealand last series, which is a bit of a unique one. And then won in Australia the time before that.
Wouldn't it be quite cool though if they went back to New Zealand, almost like if they, in quotation marks, unfinished business tour, because they left on a draw and nobody was really happy with that, and they were like, let's have extra time. So it would be so cool if they said, you know what, South Africa can't deal with COVID. Let's go over to New Zealand and finish this business that we started.
I mean, it's whether New Zealand will let us in, to be honest.
That might. But
no, I don't know. The thing with the Lions is there's a lot of history, so I think if they didn't go to South Africa, I just don't think they would do it this year, to be honest. But yeah, it's an interesting year, particularly because as well. So a lot of the English players, I haven't put this in the notes, but it's just popped into my head. A lot of the English players play for Saracens. Now, if you don't follow Premiership rugby, Saracens got docked a load of points last season because basically they did some dodgy stuff with paying of players, and as a result they got relegated. So just two examples of players who played for Saracens. You've got Owen Farrell, Maro Toje. I'm pretty sure Jamie George plays for Saracens as well.
Any of the Vunipolas?
Yes, I believe potentially both of them actually. I'm sure Billy does. Yes, you've got some fairly big English players.
They're my steak boys. They are.
Yeah, the Vunipolas are. Yeah, but as in you've got arguably like a potential captain in Owen Farrell, who I don't know what's going to be happening with him. I don't know what's happening with him rugby-wise. Perhaps I should have looked this up before starting the podcast.
Well, would Warren Gatland genuinely pick an Englishman to be the captain, even though he's basically bread and butter Welsh at the moment?
Well, he's no longer Welsh coach, is he? I mean,
no, but I just thought he'd stick around and win.
I don't know. I think that's the sort of thing that Warren Gatland wouldn't really shy away from. I think if he genuinely thought that somebody else could do a better job than a Welshman, I think he'd go for it. As in, it wasn't that. I think it was the last tour, actually, that people kicked off because I think Scotland... Did they finish above Wales? It was something like that. Scotland either finished above Wales or did as well as Wales in the Six Nations, roughly. And Scotland had, 2 players on the tour compared to, Wales, who had, a lot more than 2.
I don't think we'll be having as many as we'd have in the past.
No, probably not. I don't think Wales would be quite as well represented as they have done in previous years. But still, I can get invested in the Lions tour. So, yeah, that's one hope for the is that goes ahead and that it's a good championship and that the Lions win.
Okay.
Because it only comes around every 4 years. And more than anything, I think it would be a shame if it didn't go ahead. Just because, well, I guess it's like any sport, isn't it? But rugby, it's players are only at the peak of their powers for so. As in, this could potentially be, for example, Alan Wynne-Jones's last tour at his age. That's assuming he gets picked. It's not necessarily a given. It's usually done very much on form. So we'll have to see how that goes. But yeah, that's what I'm looking forward to. That's the first thing I'm looking forward to in the coming year. So why don't you go ahead and give one of the things that you're looking forward to?
Okay, well, after last year's very boring Premier League season, from I think anyone who wasn't a Liverpool fan, a very boring season.
Yeah,
it would be quite nice to see a Premier League title race go down to the final weekend, or at least into the final month. I'd be grateful for that, because I mean, I know Liverpool and City went down to the wire. Was it 2 years ago when City picked them by a point or 2? But to be fair, I think everyone already kind of knew what the result was at that stage, purely because City had such easy fixtures to finish it off, and I think Liverpool did as well. So it was just more a case of, will they slip up? And there was no tension to it. So we haven't really had a great dramatic final day or final run-in for quite a while. So I would quite like the Premier League title race not to be over and done with. Well, we've made it to Christmas at least. I mean, that's a blessing. I mean, I think Liverpool were up by about 15 at this stage last year.
Yeah, I think they were, yeah. I mean, do you know what? It's funny as well, because I was thinking about this, when we were doing the notes, and we've said this, probably pretty much every episode that we've done of this podcast, and the Premier League this year has been so...
entertaining.
Well, it's been topsy-turvy, isn't it? It's been, one team will win and then they lose the next week, and then their closest rival wins, and, Everton were going to win the league in September, Chelsea were going to win it, and Liverpool were going to win it, and then United are going to win it, and, who knows.
But never change. It might be United's, yeah.
Oh, yeah, perhaps I shouldn't have said that. I shouldn't have egged you on. But no, it's perhaps it's because for the past few years, and I know you said about Liverpool and City, but as in those two kind of went off into the distance, and everyone else was just kind of left lagging behind. So we haven't really had a proper...
Well, if anything, it doesn't even have to be, 2 or 3 teams going at it, later into the season. You just don't want any teams to be so dominant that they are so far ahead that... You know what I mean? Sometimes you get leagues which are relatively tight, but everybody knows who the best team is, whilst this year, I mean... Well, who knows what's going to happen in that Liverpool-United game, which is either next week or the week after. But, hopefully United win, purely because I think everyone feels a lot closer to United than Liverpool. And if United could beat Liverpool, that kind of just means everyone's nice and tight. Everyone can beat everyone. It's a little bit more random.
If United beat Liverpool, I think it opens it up a little bit. Whereas I think if Liverpool beat United, I think it's a case of United playing catch up a little bit. Not majorly, but, I unless Liverpool romp to victory from my perspective, or from your perspective, unless United romp to victory, a close Premier League title race, you can't argue with that, really, can you?
No, I mean, I'm sure everyone hopes for that every year. If that's unique to this year, but after last year's absolute runaway rout by Liverpool,
I'm not
it would be nice to have it this year.
But I wouldn't. Yeah, no, that's fair enough. In a similar vein, then, my hope for 2021, and I'd like to think that you'd probably agree with me on this, is an F1 season that goes to the last race, because as much as I
even if it doesn't go to the last race, at least to have some competitive races. Like, I'm all for Mercedes winning if they've got the best car, but my goodness, it would be nice to see somebody else just win a race that isn't Mercedes. I know the odd result for different teams, but Mercedes are just far and away flying ahead of everyone. So it would just be nice to see, even if it's just individual races, because even they lacked a little bit of drama at the front end for most of the season.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Don't get me wrong, I love Lewis Hamilton. I think he's great. I've said that before, but I think back to in the day, like, we're like, oh, Lewis Hamilton has to finish 6th in order to win the world championship, or oh, Jenson Button has to finish here, or you have to hope that if this person finishes outside the top 3, and it's just so exciting, and we haven't had it for years. We haven't had it.
What we want is people to be crashing into each other on purpose just to stop them from getting points. Bring back the days of old.
I mean, unfortunately, I think that's the only way you stop Mercedes. Perhaps this is a bit more wishful thinking than a hope, to be honest. Because, like I've said previously, I'm pretty sure Mercedes are probably going to walk it. But even the constructors, even if the constructors was competitive until the last race, just something. As in, like, Lewis Hamilton wins the 7th one, and then the race after, Mercedes win the constructors, and you're kind of there like, should we bother doing the rest, or because this is only going one way?
Yeah, it's already decided beforehand almost.
Yeah. I don't know. Hopefully, we'll see.
My second hope for the year was what I kind of wanted was Lewandowski to win the Ballon d'Or, because he has won absolutely everything he can, and I don't think there was a shadow of a doubt he was going to win the Ballon d'Or this year. That's footballer's best player award, and they decided to cancel the ceremony, but not just that, they were not going to award anyone the award this year, which seems a bit broken. I mean, even leagues that finished halfway through the year awarded like Ajax still won the Eredivisie, even though they didn't finish the season. I think everybody knew Lewandowski was going to win it, so why can't they just award it to him? But yeah, I quite like him to win it for 2021, just because I think he's such a good player, and it finally all worked out for him for this year, and he still hasn't won it because FIFA's a little bit corrupt and they don't like anybody other than Ronaldo or Messi winning an award.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see the whole, we're not doing it this year. I don't really get why, if football stopped at like March. But
the only thing I can think is that they went, well, it's unfair because some players will only play a certain amount of a season and all that. But I think that's just rubbish, because I don't think anyone in their right mind thought a player from the Eredivisie was going to win it. And if it was going to be a player from the French league, I mean, to be honest, I don't think anybody's going to award a Ballon d'Or to a team or to a player for doing particularly well in the French league. I think it primarily depends on your Champions League form, and Lewandowski was far and away dominating everybody in that as well. So,
and the thing is like, how far do you go with that? Because you could have a player who's head and shoulders above everyone else until, say, February, and then they get a season-ending injury. You don't go, oh, well, we can't award it because he didn't have the chance to play the rest of the season.
Exactly. You play what you rate them on what they've done, and it is what it is. It's a cruel sport, but without a doubt, Lewandowski was the best player this year, and without a doubt, he would have going to won the Ballon d'Or. So I think he should win it next year.
That's fair enough. I can't argue with that. He was. Well, saying that, I was about to say he was different level last season, but he always is.
Yeah.
As in,
but
like,
far and away, there isn't a better number 9.
No, as in, like, without wanting to sound arrogant from a Liverpool fan perspective, there aren't many players that I look at and think, yeah, that player will improve us this season. But, like, Lewandowski's one of those players I look at and I'd be like, yes, 100%. Definitely, I'd have Lewandowski in a heartbeat.
Him and Mbappe, maybe.
Yeah. So Liverpool, the transfer team, if you're listening, I think Robert Lewandowski would be a shrewd investment.
Yeah, wouldn't feel begrudged if he signed for United.
Yeah. right, the last one. I guess we're going back to the F1 a little bit, but this was kind of a joint one. And to be honest with you, you came up with it, and I was like, yeah, do you know what? I would 100% agree with that. And I guess it's kind of linked into what I said about the season going to the last race. And that was Ferrari being a bit more competitive.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, it's almost Ferrari being more competitive, Red Bull not digressing too much now they haven't got the what engine did they? The Honda engine, and McLaren and Renault stayed on the same trajectory and also being competitive, because obviously you see some. I mean, Renault of 2 years ago looked like they were going to contend for second last year or the year before, and then they didn't. So obviously the trajectory can go a little bit off or a little bit askew after you already look like you're going to do well. But like in a sense, you see the two Mercs, they'll always drive off, and if they're going to drive off, you at least want to battle for the podium spots. But you see Verstappen drive off as well, so it would just be nice to see at least one driver from Ferrari, at least one driver from Red Bull, at least one driver from the McLaren, at least one driver for the Renault, genuinely being competitive with each other. If anything, you kind of want the McLaren to be the better of the cars, because, well, saying that now, they've got Ricciardo now, so maybe you want the Renault to be the better of the
Danny
cars,
Rick.
because they've probably got the worst drivers out of that bunch.
Have they? Got Fernando Alonso.
Yeah, but we don't know how good he's going to be. I mean, was it all him when he was in the McLaren before? Or was it all the car? You know, it's touch and go as to what that was. But in a sense, you just want whoever's in the best car to not be the best driver, and whoever's in the worst of those cars to be the best driver, just so you have 4 teams, and then, you know, that could be 8 potential drivers all battling it out each week, because it is getting a little bit mundane seeing 3 guys drive off, because there's less drama driving for 4th.
Well, the thing is as well, it's not the fact that they drive off, it's that they drive off and you're just like, well, Hamilton or Bottas will win, and then Verstappen will come in third, or possibly second if the person who's behind in the Mercedes car drops off a bit. It's just, yeah, pretty much.
If Bottas slips up.
Yeah, it's just the way it is, isn't it? Yeah, I'd agree with you. It would be nice to have, it would just be nice to have a competitive season. That's what we hope for.
That is what we are hoping for.
Hope is a key word there.
Yeah, don't know if it'll happen.
What'd you say? Sorry,
don't know if it'll happen, and I highly doubt it in some of those.
But we can hope. There we are. Right, bold predictions for the year then. So we've got one each for the NFL, the Premier League, and the F1, because that's generally what we talk about most. So do you want to do your 3 first, and then I'll do my 3?
Sure. My NFL one was that an NFC team, this is my bold prediction, an NFC East team will have a winning record next year. And I know what you're thinking. Gosh, doesn't every division have at least one winning team? No.
No, they
The Washington
do not.
football team won the NFC East this year with a 7-9 record. So close to being 8-8, but they weren't. They were 7-9. So my bold prediction for the NFL is that an NFC East team will actually win more games than they lose by some miracle. Because, I mean, if you're a good team in the NFC East, you've already got 6 wins, because you're going to beat the other 3 teams twice. It's the same thing the Chiefs have every year. Obviously, they didn't this year. I mean, they lost to the Raiders, and they lost that inconsequential game at the end where they rested all their players to the Chargers. But, you know, up to that point, they were dominating the rest of the AFC West. So it would just be good. Well, the NFC East team already has 6 wins if they're a good team. And then you've only got to win 3 out of your remaining 10 games. So it's not a big, bold prediction, but it would be good. Oh, well, it could happen. It should happen.
Okay.
Do you want to do your NFL one next, or should I move on to the next sport?
Yeah, just do all your 3, and I'll do all of my 3.
For the football, I've got that no London team is going to finish in the top 4.
So that's excluding Spurs, Chelsea,
and Fulham as realistic candidates.
And Arsenal.
Yeah, I said realistic candidates.
Realistic.
Yeah, I just, you get this vibe now that Chelsea suck, so they're not going to do very well. It seems like the Manchester teams and Liverpool are definitely going to make it in, and then that last spot, it could go anywhere. But it's not going to be Arsenal. Chelsea don't look like they're going to get there. Spurs is the only other realistic opportunity, and you just can't rely on just Kane and Son for an entire season. At some point, it's not going to work. So I wouldn't be surprised to see if somebody else pips them to the 4th place spot, or just to the top 4 in general. And my final one is for the Formula One, and it is that Charles Leclerc will finish higher than Max Verstappen for the Formula One 2021 season.
That is indeed a bold statement.
It is, but I think, wow, as much as teams may be focusing on 2022 with new regulations for the F1, I can't help but think Ferrari won't just settle for more of the same. So I wouldn't be surprised if they do improve their performances a little bit, but also I do think that Red Bull car could end up suffering because they don't have the same... I mean, I heard rumours that they were going to make their own engine at one stage. I don't know if that's for this year or for the new regulations. So yeah, my bold prediction is that, Leclerc was fantastic last year in a very, very mediocre car. So if he could be fantastic this year and the car just improves that little touch, who knows? He could finish the season with more points than Max Verstappen.
There we are. Bold claim. Right, I'm going to make my bold claim now. And this one is probably even bolder than what you just said. My bold claim is that the Bills are going to win the Super Bowl.
And I think that is the biggest load of rubbish I've ever heard in my life. There is not a chance that anyone but the Chiefs are winning it this year. We're running it back.
I mean, we did say it's a bold prediction.
It is a bold
prediction. Who knows?
Prediction, and that is very bold.
The Bills have been playing all right.
To be fair, they're probably the second best team in the AFC at the moment.
Yeah.
Well, they are. They actually got the 2 seed. But
yeah.
They are looking like the second best team.
The 2 seed is the second best team.
No, cray.
Yeah, so that's my bold prediction for the NFL. They've been playing quite well. So, I don't know, I feel like they've got a bit of the underdog about them. And I always like that. Premier League. Actually, no, I'll do my Formula 1 first because I feel like that one's slightly less... well, and maybe not, actually. My next bold prediction is that Sergio Perez is going to finish second in the Drivers' Championship.
See, that's a tough one. Because, firstly, I'm living on the assumption there that you still think Hamilton's going to win it. Mm-hmm. So... That
is indeed... There's a reason why I said second, isn't there?
Yeah.
Because I feel like the first is a foregone conclusion, the way things are at the moment.
So 2 things have to happen here. He has to be better than Max Verstappen in Max Verstappen's own car, basically.
Yep.
And then he's also got to beat Bottas on average. And to be fair, Verstappen was very close to beating him this year. Mm-hmm. And who knows what will happen if a third driver joins the fun at the top. Because, more often than not, Hamilton's going to win the race. And then it kind of does come down to a little bit of a dogfight between Bottas and Verstappen. Yeah. I don't know if the presence of a third good driver does anything to unstable... Because, in a sense, what will happen is he'll take points from both Bottas and Verstappen. Because, you'll assume that he's going to finish above 1 or 2 of them on some weekends. You know what I mean? So, in a sense, it flattens... No. It makes it more erratic in a sense, because if you were to put Bottas and Verstappen head to head every week, you'd assume Bottas comes out on top on more scenarios than Verstappen because he's got the better car. But if you add a third driver in, that takes away some of the points from each, and then, in a sense, rather than saying you've got, you're going to be second or third over 10 races. It's going to be you now second, third, or fourth over 10 races. It just creates the extra variable where Bottas has to beat both of them on more occasions. And I don't know if he can do that. I don't know if he can flatten or smoothen that curve of erraticism where he's... Because in a sense, when you've got that third driver, it just makes things a little bit more hectic. And it means he could potentially slump off a lot more in some and really get punished. But he could also do particularly well if Perez starts to beat Verstappen and not beat him. So
this is the thing, I think this is basically what we've said in the past, isn't it? That's why Red Bull needed, whether that was Albon or whether it was Perez, they needed another driver up there competing consistently because it just gives you more of a chance. You're right. I feel like, in hindsight, that's a bit. It's the fact that you said it's not just the fact that he's got to beat Bottas, but he's got to do it consistently over the course of a season and on average finish ahead of Bottas more than Bottas finishes ahead of him. But I think
and
in terms of quality, I don't think that's unrealistic. I think it's just the car wouldn't allow that to happen.
He has to beat Verstappen first and foremost. And in a sense, Verstappen was competing on tracks which favoured the Merc for most of the season. Next year is going to be a different story. They've got more of those tracks which the Red Bull should or historically is better at.
Yeah.
When you have the Monaco tracks and some of those. So in a sense, he'll have more, you know what I mean? Bottas only just beat Verstappen on tracks which favoured him. So next year, you'd assume if they're less in favour, it should be tighter and possibly even Verstappen should be better. But it's a tough one as to whether he can do both and the car is still genuinely quicker. Because, I mean, our two predictions for the F1 kind of work in the opposite flows where you're assuming that, well, firstly that Perez beats Verstappen, but then that the Red Bull car will be quick enough to also beat Bottas. Whilst I'm going the opposite, saying that, well, firstly I'm going to think that, I don't know if, I'd probably say Verstappen's probably going to beat Perez in my eyes, but I'm then saying that the Red Bull's going to go downhill and they're actually going to end up losing to a Ferrari of all cars. Interesting.
Oofed. There we are. So that's my F1 bold prediction and my Premier League bold prediction. Now, this is probably the boldest. But I'd quite like to see it happen. I don't know why. And that is for Aston Villa to finish in the top 4. Because I would argue that Jack Grealish is arguably, I still can't say it, debatably, being one of the... sorry?
You had it right the whole time, I think.
Oh yeah, I know. I just couldn't say it. I kept tripping over my tongue. Arguably being one of the best players in the Premier League this season, I would say Jack Grealish. Just always looks very dangerous. I don't know, like, it's one of those ones where it's like...
To be fair, they're like that lingering taste which no one can get rid of. They're drawing against Chelsea. To be fair, they lost to United, but that was only just. And it's like...
Yeah, and you could argue they were unlucky to have conceded a pen as well.
Touch and go.
Soft, yeah.
It was soft, but they happen. But they will not... No one seems to be able to kick them away. And eventually...
This is the thing, we're in January now.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I was speaking to you about this the other day with United and Liverpool being at the top at the moment. It's like, I don't for a moment think that United are a better team than Liverpool this season because Liverpool are the favourites. They won it last year dominantly. They probably have the better squad despite having these defensive woes.
Injuries, yeah.
But... in a sense, if you asked me to go up against Novak Djokovic in a game of tennis, and they gave me the option of playing him over 5 sets or playing him over one game, I'd take him over the one game because the one game's, it's got more randomness. The less games that are remaining, the more random the results. The more games that are remaining, the easier it is for the big boys to push away from those smaller teams. So if no one can kick Villa away sooner rather than later... wouldn't be surprised. I would be surprised if they got top 4, but don't be surprised to see if they're, within a few points of them. But yeah, because in a sense, you only have to finish 7th at the moment to get there. That's if assuming teams in the top 4 win all the other cup competitions. But a team like Villa, they on a points basis, I wouldn't be surprised to see them less than 7 points off the top 4 at least.
We'll use a question then on that. It's a little bit of a debate, but we'll go there. Would Villa be better off finishing sort of 8th this season, avoid European football, and then push for top 4 next year?
No, I don't think so because I don't think they've got the resources or the squad at the moment
to back themselves for one full season.
Exactly, and they're already in a good enough spot at the moment.
Just take the opportunity while you can. Yeah,
and you don't know what's going to happen next year. Wolves kind of had that last year. I wouldn't have said that they planned on finishing outside the European places, but they did. And they go into the season, everyone's like, hey, they got a real chance of making Champions League football purely
then,
because they haven't got as many games. You get one injury to Raul Jimenez. I mean, that could be Jack Grealish, Ollie Watkins, a player like Tyrone Mings, Emi Martinez, and all of a sudden they're not the same Aston Villa team, and they're all of a sudden. Wait, I'm not going to say Wolves are in a relegation scrap because they're not, but a team like Villa, they haven't quite got the resources of a Wolves at the moment. And
well, you just have to look at Sheffield last year.
Yeah, exactly.
Sheffield last year were up until the break for the pandemic. You were looking at Sheffield and you're going like Sheffield could be in the Champions League next year, and then all of a sudden they dropped off towards the end of last season, and this season they're rock bottom with like some terrible records to their name. So, you've got to take the opportunity while you can, I guess.
Even Leicester City, they win the Premier League. And I don't think that year anyone ever said, hey, do you guys want to ease off just so that you can, you know what I mean? You go for it. You go for the jugular when you got the opportunity because there's lots of money to be made finishing in the top four. That's the sort of money you can reinvest.
I guess I'm thinking sceptically about the Europa League because it can be...
that's always a hindrance. No team wants to finish in the Europa if you got a realistic chance of... Like, you know what I mean? United, Spurs, Chelsea, they don't like finishing in the Europa because it compromises them for the year after. No one wants to play Thursday football.
No. There we are. So those are our bold predictions for the season. If you're listening on YouTube, perhaps put a comment down below. What do you think? Do you think we're being absolutely ludicrous?
Any bold predictions of your own?
Yeah, I know I'm being a bit bonkers in some of mine, but perhaps let us know your bold predictions. Or perhaps tell us whether you think we're being absolutely... Well, tell us if we're being bonkers. Right, we'll move on to the last week's sport name. Highlights of the week. Should we kick off with that?
Sounds good.
Do you want to go first, or shall I go first?
I'll go first.
Go for it.
Mine's not as cool as yours, but Peter Drury, the commentator, absolutely roasted Chelsea during that City game.
He was brutal.
He was just teasing them the entire game, and I loved every minute of it. Even at one stage, after a period of City dominance, Kurt Zouma got a clearance. Peter Drury said, Chelsea have had their first touch since about last Tuesday. This is the sort of humiliation they were dealing with. So yeah, I quite enjoyed listening to Peter Drury on the weekend.
I'm sure he said something else as well, like the lamp in Lampard has gone out.
Just quick quips, which really put salt in the wound, which is very, very open at the moment at Chelsea.
There we are. Right, we'll come back to Chelsea. So Chelsea fans, prepare yourself. We don't talk about Arsenal anymore.
We've got the knuckle dusters now. Instead. Let's go.
I haven't done my highlight of the week.
No.
My highlight of the week was also football. It was Bundesliga football, though. I'm going to butcher this name now. Nedim Amiri.
Looks
I think that's how you... in the Frankfurt Leverkusen game, my goodness. It was like Dennis Bergkamp style, but he managed to... He nutmegged two people. So the ball kind of got played to him on his right foot.
Spinning.
And he got kind of...
On an outside trajectory. I don't know why. I don't know if that's the right terminology for it, but it was. He was spinning away from where the ball was going, and then brought it all the way around, didn't he?
Yeah, and he brought it right the way around. But not only did he do that, he did it through the defender's legs, and then proceeded to backheel the ball through the goalkeeper's legs to score. It's like, what?
It was outrageous. It's one of those where if you were playing a game of FIFA, you're throwing a controller because you were like, that is ridiculous. That sort of stuff doesn't happen in real life. And it's like, well, it does happen in real life.
Well, it does. It just happened. Well, genuinely, I think that could quite easily be Pushka's right there.
Really?
Oh, honestly, is in that.
To be fair,
it's not just the. I mean, the finish alone is pretty mental. As into backheel, not only to backheel it and score, but to backheel it and nutmeg the goalkeeper and score. But then he's also nutmegged the centre half in the process. One of the most bonkers touches I think I've ever seen. So, yes, as you can tell, I was quite excited by that. So that was my highlight of the week.
Nice.
Right, football. Going to stick with Europe for a minute. I guess one of the biggest bits of news is that Pochettino is the new boss of Paris Saint-Germain.
Yes. I mean, this isn't in the notes, but we've mentioned it before in passing. Mm-hmm. I'm be honest, as a Man United fan, I'm quite happy because I do get a little bit fed up with the talk and the comments that I understand Ole Gunnar Solskjaer looks like a PE teacher, and no one quite values his abilities because he's not got any. Well, he's never won anything proper, and you know what I mean. He hasn't got a grand experience or anything of turning a team into a great team, like Pep Guardiola does, or Klopp, or Mourinho. But I do like that United actually giving him a chance, and I don't know how long that chance was going to be there, as long as Pochettino was a free agent. So with a team like PSG now signing Pochettino, it takes the pressure off Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, because there isn't really a great manager out there now which is looking for a job. And Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, I mean, I'm going to say, I think he deserves to keep the job at the moment. I mean, people always say, oh, he's doing bad, but I'll be honest, the media against United is pretty vitriol. It really isn't kind in a sense, and it's if you have one or two bad games, it's like they're looking to sack you, mate. It's like I don't genuinely think they are looking to sack them ever. I just don't think they ever give him time at the same time. But now there's no one out there who could realistically replace him. I mean, I don't mind it. And the thing is, good managers are going to come and go. Pochettino, I mean, PSG are just one of those clubs. They'll sack him probably in 2 years' time for absolutely no reason. Because they just get over-ambitious and they're like, oh, yes, we should be winning back-to-back-to-back Champions Leagues, and, we've only made it to the final. It's like, well, perhaps that's because your team's not very good. It just is what it is.
But I don't know, season. I think Pochettino is... If I was to look at the world of football, if Jurgen Klopp were to get sacked tomorrow, Pochettino would be the man that I'd want in charge.
Yeah, and I'm the same. If Ole Gunnar Solskjaer got sacked tomorrow, Pochettino would probably be the manager I want. But I don't want Pochettino at the expense of Solskjaer when there's no reason to get rid of Solskjaer. It's like replacing something with something new and shinier when the current thing already works. It's like you're just doing it for the sake of it, and there's no guarantee that it's going to work. Why change something that works? It's not broken.
Yeah, I mean, I guess how long do you give Solskjaer though? Because he's been, I understand that like people say, oh well, Liverpool gave Klopp 5 years, but it's like, right, well, hang on, Liverpool when Klopp took over is a very different team to when Solskjaer took over at United.
Is it? It is in some essences because it didn't have the finance. When you talk.
Yeah, maybe not necessarily in terms of. Well, you say that,
but you look from where he's trying to take them and where he's taking them to. I'd say it's about the same.
I disagree.
Liverpool have been close to second. Well, second, not long before he took over.
But then they finished 6th, and then they were close to relegation again. It was only like November, to be fair, so it wasn't long into the season. But they were really struggling under Rodgers. But let's not forget, our left back was Alberto Moreno. Simon Mignolet was our number one goalkeeper. We had Sacco and Skirtle, a centre half, with who'd have been our right back at that point.
To be honest, sometimes situations like that can be quite convenient for a manager in the sense that you look at the squad and you go, that's rubbish, and everybody knows it, so there's no lingering loyalties. Well, you know what I mean? Solskjaer joined after Mourinho. Mourinho had signed Pogba, and what if Solskjaer was like, I don't really want Pogba, I don't really want Martial, I don't really want some of these big name players like De Gea possibly. And then it's like, well, you can't really get rid of them because they're long-staying names and everybody knows them. But
all right, let's put it this way.
The different challenges. I mean, I probably would have said what Klopp's done is by far more impressive than what Solskjaer's done.
Yeah. I mean, I guess what I'm saying is how long do you give Solskjaer? How long would you give him as a United fan?
Well, it completely depends on circumstance. I mean, if Liverpool go off the next 3 years and, do what they did last year, and Solskjaer is the one finishing second by about 10 points, I'll keep him because I don't think anyone's going to compete with Liverpool. But when you're looking at him compared to everybody else, and if they're all, 5, 6, 7 points behind, and he's sort of, I wouldn't say he's fluttering, where he gets a couple of good ones and he gets a couple of bad ones, but over time he'll smoothen them out and he'll learn what he's doing. And, as long as he's close... that's the thing United have been missing for a while. We've been the team scrapping for 4th. I don't want to be the team scrapping for 4th. I'm more than happy being the team solidifying 2nd. Of course I want to win things. But just, I don't want any of this constant up and down, new manager here, new manager there, just for the sake of it. I'd much rather a long stay, no nonsense Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, who's just keeping us in the game all the time.
Yeah, and I mean, I can understand the perspective of, you don't want to be changing managers like footwear, but I mean, I guess it's a difficult balance to have, isn't it? Because I think, again, I'm speaking from the perspective of a Liverpool fan, but as in, Brendan Rodgers, okay, when we sacked him, he was in a bit of a bad run of form, but as in the season before, he'd finished 6th. Okay, Steven Gerrard dropped off the boil in the final year of his career. Suarez had gone. Daniel Sturridge was basically injured for the majority of the season. So there were a few factors there where you could go, that's unfortunate. The season before, we got to 2nd in the league. But then the ownership looked at it and went, well, Jurgen Klopp is out there. Why not go and get Jurgen Klopp?
And I can understand that. Yeah, and to be fair, I can see the same for Solskjaer. If he does what Brendan Rodgers did, hands down, it's time for him to go. He hasn't got that backing because he hasn't won anything. But at the same time, if Klopp goes down to 6th at the moment, I don't think anyone's sacking him for Pochettino because they know what Klopp's done. And if Solskjaer goes out there now, let's say he wins the Premier League this year, highly unlikely. I'm saying that now, it's highly unlikely that's going to ever happen. But let's say he goes and wins the Europa now that he's just dropped into that, and maybe he wins an FA Cup. And then next year he's, still 2nd, and he gets to the final of something, and then the year after he starts to go down a little bit. I'd be honest, I'd probably stick with him at that point, looking at what he'd done the previous 2 years. If he's winning stuff at least and still genuinely up there, and he's just had one off season, I don't want him to sack him. I mean, I think when Liverpool looked at Rodgers, even when they were coming 2nd, it was kind of like, my goodness, Liverpool is still that team that's going up 3-0 and drawing 3-3 to Crystal Palace. It's like there was still something in the culture and the identity a little bit wrong with them that they couldn't kill off these small teams. But Jurgen Klopp came in and went, no, we're going to kill them, and we're going to kill them properly, and we're not going to just get to 3 and then be that team that looks leggy. We're going to go out there and score 5 or 6 or 7. And that's the right way to go about it. And, I think that's what Klopp's done. He's put that different mentality in them. And I think to some extent that's what Solskjaer's trying to do. I mean, you look at the Leeds game, it was like we went up, 3-4-0? Yeah, it was 3. No, it went to 4-0, I think. Then it went 4-1, 5-1, 5-2, and then it went 6-2. It was almost that, no, we're not going to bend, we're not going to buckle. We could have just sat off at 3. No, we're going to keep pressing, we're going to score 6 because that's the team we are. We're Man United, we're attacking. And I quite like that. Anyway, going back to Pochettino, which the whole conversation was on. Does it make PSG a genuine challenger for Europe this year? Or even next year?
I think so. I certainly think so. As in,
to be fair, he got very close with a Spurs team that, what I mean. As much as they're a good team, that he didn't spend any money to get them, really.
I mean, you look at the players that he's got at his disposal at Paris Saint-Germain.
It's disgusting.
Well, as in Mbappe and Neymar alone, they're the sort of players that are good enough. If you can just be solid defensively, you don't have to have world-beating centre halves. If you have a good defence, like a solid defence, those are the sort of players that they can win you games. Now I know that that every player has their off game, but as in, let's put it this way: as a fan of Liverpool, the prospect of facing a Paris Saint-Germain side managed by Pochettino is a lot more nerve-wracking than a PSG side managed by Thomas Tuchel.
Oh, I don't know. I'll be honest. I haven't seen much of Tuchel, but I think he's got something about him. I don't think he's a bad manager. I just don't think he's managed a big club yet.
Oh, I don't think he's a bad manager. I'm not saying he's a bad manager, but I think Pochettino's that next level.
Is he? Well, yeah, you could probably say he is. So. He's good at turning an average team into a great team. But has he got that killer instinct?
This is the thing.
You see your Pep Guardiola, you see your Jose Mourinho's, your Klopps, and they kill you. They will go for the jugular. They know how to win the big games. And
but then, when you think about it, this is the thing. This is Pochettino's first. This is his first. And this is the first time. The Pochettino, I mean, I don't know what PSG's financial situation, but assuming that there's nothing dodgy going on or anything that could get them in trouble, this could be Pochettino's first time that a team which are willing to spend. Like,
Yeah.
spend. He could go, this is the player, rather than having to be like, oh, well, I'll have to just drag everything out of the players that I've got. And that's not to say that all of the players at Spurs were terrible.
No, but when they had
the
new stadium, he wasn't allowed to buy anyone for like 2 years.
Exactly.
And he still produced wonders.
Exactly. So Pochettino now can be like, right, this is the player I want. I want to buy this player, and he is going to be my defensive midfielder, for example.
Yeah.
Which I think is a well, for the rest of Europe, I think it's a bit of a frightening prospect. I'm not saying that they're immediately going to go and dominate in the Champions League.
No, because you see that with teams like Chelsea spend loads of money and they're still an average team.
Yeah.
But, you see Pochettino and... I mean, I don't know how much of that was Daniel Levy and how much was Pochettino, but the signings they made at the very least with what they had are phenomenal.
Yeah.
And who's to say you can't do that to a greater extent with more money?
So we'll see. I think it makes PSG a bit more of a player in the game when it comes to Champions League anyway. So personally, I think Pochettino's going to take them to the next level. Those are my thoughts.
I think they'll stay the same space.
You don't think it's going to change much?
I think there's a little bit too much player power at that team. Guys like Neymar can really influence too much to an extent what happens. But also, I think any club or any team that plays its domestic football in a Farmers League, I think you can never really consider them a genuine challenger for Champions League football because...
Farmers League?
Well,
wow.
Is there another good team in French football? No. And, people say, Lyon. I said, Lyon aren't a good team. Lyon are an Everton. You know what I mean? They're just average, like above average rather. But then when PSG play their probably 2 games a year against a really good team in the Champions League, they're out of their depth. They're not used to it. You got teams like Real Madrid playing Barcelona, Atletico Madrid, and Sevilla, 8 to 9, 10 times a season in all of the Spanish competitions. You got the English teams playing each other about 16 times over, the course of a season. And you got the French league, and they're not playing anyone genuine. They go to the Champions League, and they're like a fish out of water. They don't know what's going on.
Fish out of water.
Yeah.
Like a fish out of water. Yeah. What a great description. There we are. Right, so those are our thoughts on Pochettino and Paris Saint-Germain. Right, back to Premier League.
It's still in the same vein to some extent, moving on to Spurs. It is.
Moving on to Spurs. Good segue. Yes. Spurs' former manager. No, hang on.
Former players. Pochettino's previous players. Oh, look at that, 3 Ps.
Segue.
Kane and Son.
Yes.
Are they... Well, I mean, I'm going to say it now, they're probably the best duo in the league this season. I don't think...
This season, definitely, yeah.
Are they the best duo of all time in the Premier League?
Oh, I mean...
You've got Henry and Bergkamp. Is that correct? Did they play together?
Yes, I think so.
I'm right in saying that, yeah.
I mean,
I double checked it. I thought they both did play together.
As a Liverpool fan, I'm going to put Suarez and Sturridge in the hat there.
That's not a bad shout.
To be fair, like whatever you say about, in looking back now, you could see that Sturridge clearly fed off Suarez's brilliance.
Yeah.
But for that one season, I don't think I've ever seen. To be fair, I've not watched a massive amount of Spurs this year, so I'm not saying that they are outright better than the Spurs do. But me personally, I've never watched a better duo than that.
Mm-hmm. Then I did try to think. I racked my brain then quickly, and I thought, have United ever had a 2, which has been in the same vein as them? And I thought, no, they haven't. But they've had a 4. At one stage, they did have Ronaldo, Rooney, Tevez, and Berbatov, which might be, I think, the best 4.
It's not a bad 4.
Best attack probably you could ever imagine, because that just had everything in it. Slick the skill from Berbatov, the ruthlessness of Rooney and Tevez, and then Ronaldo, the best player in the world at the time. But yeah, going back to just a duo, what are your thoughts?
Well, the one thing I would say about these two as a duo, it's not just the amount of goals they score, it's the amount they assist each other.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I don't know what the statistics would be for Suarez and Sturridge, as in I know they scored a crazy amount of goals between them. I'd imagine they assisted each other a fair few times, just purely because of the positions they are on the pitch. I mean, I guess the thing that's slightly different as well is that, like you've got striking partnerships. Suarez and Sturridge, for example. Son's a winger, and he's not a striker, is he? So you could argue that it makes it a little bit more interesting.
Yeah, I got you. But to be fair, he kind of has that free reign. Almost like De Bruyne, but to a more attacking it.
He's almost like he's like a centre forward, isn't he? Rather than his position is on the wing, but as in he plays a bit of everywhere, really. I don't know. I think I'd be hard. I don't know. I feel like it would be difficult for me to judge and say outright, yes, they are the best, just because I haven't seen them play enough this season, and we're halfway through the season. So I think it will very much depend on. I mean, if this kind of vein of form carries on, then you'd be hard pressed to argue otherwise, wouldn't you?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, just for context, Son and Kane, their goal contributions, their connection rather this season is, I think they're on 13 goals where one has assisted the other, and that's the record of all time for one season in the Premier League. And we're not even halfway. so they're not even halfway through the season, and they already have more connected goals, one where one of those two scored and the other one assisted, than any strike partnerships ever had in Premier League history. But also, I mean, they've scored 76% of Spurs' goals this season between the two of them.
That's crazy, isn't it?
And for comparison, for the other four teams which finished top last year, this year they've only Liverpool's two most prolific players have scored 51% of their goals. City's two most prolific goal scorers have scored just 38% of theirs. United's two most prolific scored 55% of theirs this year, and Chelsea's have scored 33%. So, I mean, only two of them are just scraping above 50%, and Harry Kane and Son have closer to 100% than they are to
3/4, aren't they? They scored 3/4 of their team's goals. Is there an argument that perhaps the rest of the team isn't really putting a shift in?
You could say that.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, the number of goals scored would suggest that actually no, it is the fact that they've been exceptional. But at the same time, you kind of like 3/4 of your team's goals are scored by two people.
Steven Bergwijn had the most opportunities in their game on the weekend, and he didn't get a goal. And he hasn't scored in 27 games. So, I mean, the fact that Kane and Son, I think they both got a goal.
27?
Yeah, 27 games Steven Bergwijn has not scored in.
No way.
Yeah, me and Jack used to call Steven Bergwijn Big Pigeon because his name's Bergwijn if you say the J incorrectly for the Dutch. The same way as Van Dijk is Van Dijk, and who was
flipping heck?
There's somebody.
Wijnaldum.
Yeah, Wijnaldum. We also called him. So Bergwijn, Big Pigeon.
Just to clarify, Liverpool fans, I never called Wijnaldum Wijnaldum, and I never called Van Dijk Van Dijk. I did call Bergwijn Big Pigeon. I'll be honest.
Bergwijn, the Big Pigeon.
There we are.
That's funny.
There we are. But I don't really know how to follow up from that. But yeah, no, you know, if they carry on in that that little run of form, fair play, because that's very impressive.
Absolutely.
Right, to the other part of London then. Arsenal. I guess I'm going to start off by saying, perhaps apologies to Arsenal fans, because I'm pretty sure probably only like 2 episodes ago, maybe even last episode, I said that Arsenal were relegation candidates. And they've just gone and thumped West Brom 4-0 after Big Sam said that, oh yes, you absolutely have to consider them relegation candidates. So they put Big Sam in his place. Now won their last 3 in a row. So you could... Do you know what? It's interesting because I kind of skimmed these notes before we started, and obviously you've put your bits in, I put the bits that I wanted to say in, and I've just read your note about who those last 3 games were against.
My knuckle dusters are still on, Jack.
It's changed my opinion a little bit. I still don't think I don't think they're relegation candidates. I think just purely what we've seen in the last 3 games shows that they have got enough fight to stay in the Premier League. I never thought I'd say that. I never thought I'd say that on a podcast discussing Premier League football, that Arsenal have got enough to stay up. But no, in all seriousness, I think they're too good for a relegation fight.
You
to
see,
be honest,
I'm still on the other side of the fence. I still think Arsenal are rubbish. They're 3 wins, which is
yeah. Go on. Who are the 3 wins against?
Chelsea, a team which, to be fair, top half of the table, and at one stage we thought could win the Premier League. They are in free fall right now. They are not very good. They beat a Brighton team, which is lingering just ever so slightly above the relegation places, and they beat a West Brom team that is well and truly second bottom in the relegation scrap. So, I mean, they're beating teams out of form or teams that are genuinely not very good. And I just think it's a smoke and mirrors, it is. Well, I think that's the right phrase. But they're not a good team. You can't just beat bad teams and everyone goes, you're great. You see all of the hype on Arsenal Twitter, and they're loving it. They're saying, oh, we're back. We're dominating teams. Anyone can beat West Brom 4-0. Anyone can. Sunday League team can beat them 4-0. They don't attack. Sam Allardyce had 10 shots on targets for his first 3 games. That is the lowest since the stat was recorded through three games of a manager's first 3 games at a new club. Arsenal are the same rubbish team that they were 2 months ago. There's nothing changed. 3 wins.
Scathing, Jack.
A 1-0 against Brighton. That's not convincing. The 4-0 against West Brom. You'd hope any average team could do that. And then, to be fair, it's a scalp to beat Chelsea, but meh.
Do you reckon there's not just even though it's not necessarily a change in quality though? Is it not just that slight change in mentality? Do you not think that's enough to kind of get them up the table a little bit?
Nah, because I think as soon as they play a genuine Premier League side, they'll get found out again, and then they'll be like, "Oh gosh, we aren't very good." And I think that'll sort of shock them back into the normality of things, and they'll start to slip back down the table. I mean, the next few games.
So you think they're still in a relegation fight, right?
I'm not saying they're in a relegation fight because that was always tongue in cheek, but you see those relegation teams at the bottom. The teams that will be there at the end of the season, without a doubt. And those are your Sheffield United, your West Brom, Fulham, Brighton.
Yeah.
Burnley could probably get out of that scrap. Newcastle could get out of that scrap. I wouldn't be surprised to see Arsenal, say, 14th, 15th or 16th come the end of the season. Because I genuinely don't think Mikel Arteta's very good. And they're going to be the best of a bad bunch. Those teams are bad teams. Yeah. Arsenal is one step above. And that is it.
Yeah.
Because you look at all of the other teams in the league, and you say they actually have a bit of genuine quality. I mean, for context, Southampton. Well, actually, no, I'm not going to tell you the score. I won't tell you that.
I know the score. Don't you worry.
Okay. Southampton are currently beating Liverpool at this very moment in time, and they're 6th. And usually you'd say they're a relegation team, but they're not. They're showing a bit of character, a bit of class. So are Leeds. Crystal Palace are going out there and beating the odd team. Wolves are a good team, but they've been injury stricken. Leeds are a good team. There's lots of good teams there. You look at that top 10.
Yeah.
You look at that top 10 and probably West Ham's the only team I can see Arsenal beating. That's a worry.
Yeah.
There's probably 13 teams that I can't see Arsenal beating this season. Yeah, and I think that's just the state of play for them. I wouldn't say they're a relegation fight. I'd just say they're one step above.
Okay. Moving on from that, then, the next point is that there's 3 points between them and Chelsea.
Yeah.
Speaking of Chelsea, what are your thoughts?
Well, I'll be honest. I don't think Lampard will see out the season.
Ooh. Well, do you know what? I was about to say that's bold, but I don't know. It's a real possibility now, I think.
If Frank Lampard hadn't played for Chelsea in his career, he'd be sacked by the end of the month, I think.
Yeah.
I think because he coaches them, he could just see it to the end of the season, purely for nostalgia reasons. But there is not a chance that a manager who's been given a £220 million war chest and has bought some of the best players across Europe should be languishing in 8th position, 9th position, actually, correction. It's just inexcusable. They've just signed Thiago Silva and Ben Chilwell, Eduard Mendy. That's 3 of the 5 players that are defending, and they're still rubbish at defending. They signed Timo Werner, Hakim Ziyech, and Kai Havertz, and they're not scoring. They're actually scoring less goals than they were last year. It's like, what on earth are you doing? You were better off playing Tammy Abraham and Olivier Giroud than playing this striker that you've just gone out and spent like 50, 60 million on.
Yeah.
Honestly, he's in danger of getting the sack if he. I mean, he's just so stubborn as well. Like they were saying, when he starts to win games, Lampard at Chelsea, well, last season in particular, he's stuck with the same formula. It's like, okay, all commendable for you. But as soon as it goes wrong, he's like, well, I haven't got a plan B because my plan A was only luckily working. Now he's got a plan. Now he's thinking of a plan B. Gosh. But of course, everyone who signed for Chelsea, of course, signed because they want to play for Lampard. Don't forget that. They'll never let you forget that. They signed for Chelsea because they want to play for Lampard, this tactical managerial genius who's got one formation, and if it doesn't work, gosh, put that new striker you got out on the wing in the worst position he seems to play. Genius.
I mean, I think last season was an interesting one for Chelsea because it was almost like a little bit of a buy, wasn't it, for Lampard? As in they couldn't. Okay, they got Pulisic in, but as in they lost Hazard. So I was about to say that's like for like with the way Hazard was playing before he left. It's not really like for like, as in.
Yeah,
what I mean fair, is
you look at
position
that Chelsea,
for position.
You look at that Chelsea team when Hazard was there. They look at that and they go, "There's no one good apart from Hazard," and they were still winning the league. Well, Hazard and Kante, probably the only 2 decent players in that team, and they were winning the league. Now they've sold Hazard. Oh, okay, that's a loss. But they've bought £220 million worth of players, and they are 4 or 5 positions worse off. You can't tell me that manager is an improvement on what they used to have.
I mean, this is the thing. Is in like when I was looking at the signings that Chelsea were making at the start of the season, I was like, I think I remember saying at the time, I think Chelsea are the number 1 contenders. I still thought Liverpool were the best team, in all honesty, but I thought Chelsea are the team that I'm worried about most. In hindsight, perhaps there was a little bit of a, perhaps I didn't consider the fact that it doesn't necessarily click straight away, and that's fair enough. You look at Pep Guardiola, for example. Pep Guardiola took over a City and they finished, I think it was 4th, wasn't it? Was it 4th they finished in his first season?
Yeah, it wasn't convincing.
It wasn't convincing, but there were still signs. Whereas, like you say, Chelsea right now, despite the fact that they've spent many millions on, and it's not just like they've spent it on one player. Between Ziyech, Havertz, and Werner, that's a new front 3.
Mm-hmm.
If you play someone out of position, which he has done, he's played Werner on the wing
because he doesn't know how to use him. He doesn't know how to use any of his players because he's not a great manager. It's like I think you put Ole Gunnar Solskjaer in that team, and because he's not English, he's getting sacked at this stage. But because Frank Lampard's born and bred Londoner or whatever, it's like, oh, well, we'll give him to the end of the season. It's like, oh. It's absolute rubbish it is that he's still in that club. He's not a great manager. Not a great manager. Yeah. It didn't make sense to me.
No, I mean, I'll be honest with you, it still baffles me. This season is still very odd in that, everyone was like, oh, Arsenal getting relegated, and like 2 weeks later, 3 points between them and Chelsea, who a couple of weeks ago themselves, we were saying... title contenders. Yeah. It's bizarre.
Shows how wrong we
Absolutely
were.
Bizarre. Yeah, I know.
But the thing is, some people have said, it's because of COVID. They've had a shortened pre-season. They haven't had a chance to gel or whatever. This is what happened. It's like, we're in January, and it's going downhill. Yeah. If it's going downhill in January, what are we doing for the other 3 months? Was it just, we're just still finding our feet winning games? We found our feet, let's start to lose them.
Well, and I guess this is the thing, is in like, you're not expecting... And I guess this is perhaps where it was a bit unfair in how I assess Chelsea, is in you can't expect, when you're bringing in so many new players, like I said, you can't expect it to click straight away. Mm-hmm. But the fact that, like, I have no idea how many goals Timo Werner is on, but it's not many so far this season. It can't be more than 10, I wouldn't think.
I wouldn't say it's more than 5.
Yeah, as in he has really struggled, and that's partly because he's been played out of position. But it's not like they're solid defensively. As in, like, I remember at the start of the season, everyone was like, "Oh, Edouard Mendy, they get Mendy, and they'll be solid." And Edouard Mendy had like one cracking game.
Well,
and
to be fair, yeah, they had a decent defence for a few games, and it was like, okay, it disguised how bad they were up front. And then all of a sudden, everyone was like, oh, hang on. When they start to concede goals, they're rubbish. And you know why that is? Because they can't attack. And you know why that is? Because they haven't got a coach.
I sense that you're not a fan of Lampard, Jack.
Oh, I just can't stand the arrogance of Chelsea fans, or anyone who's like is a big Lampard advocate. It's like he bottled a playoff spot in the Championship when he was Derby manager. It's like, well, let's reward him with a job at Chelsea. It's like, yeah, that works, doesn't it? Those two things correlate 100%. And then he gets to the Chelsea job, and he's given a whole year to work himself out. Not like Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, who was out there having to work out on the fly. Not like Mikel Arteta, who joins, a burning house when he joined. It's like, well, Lampard is in a great position where he's got a reason to do bad. He's got another one this year because he's got COVID. All those guys are suffering, or they haven't got all the preseason they needed, but they're just not a good team. I mean, found out the winning percentage under Abramovich's ownership. Chelsea manager winning percentage. Lampard ranks second bottom on 49%. Only guy below him was Villas-Boas, 48%. And that's managers who played more than 20 games, I believe, or not played, coached more than 20 games. Points per game. Well, actually, I won't do that one because you're going to use that start later.
No, I changed my start. Okay. You can say
Frank Lampard's point per game, the worst out of every manager that has managed more than 20 games for Abramovich. It's like he's just getting a get out of jail free card. You look at guys like Avram Grant. You got him to the Champions League finals. He gets sacked. Gus Hiddink joined twice and both times got him to the Europa League final, I think, or very far in the European competitions.
Well, the one time he joined, they were in 8th, I think. Or they finished 8th, as in that was the year that Mourinho got sacked and they were really struggling. So, yeah.
Di Matteo wins the Champions League. Next year he's not given 4 games. It's like, well, Lampard, doesn't make any sense to me. He should get the sack before the end of January, because if he doesn't, it's just complete bias, it is.
Yeah.
It's a farce.
But then, this is the thing though. Are Chelsea, have they finally cottoned on to the fact that you can't just keep going through managers? Do you think there's, as in, like, let's be fair now. When you look at that list, you've got Jose Mourinho, Conte, Ancelotti, Scolari. Okay, Scolari's probably a bit of a bygone era now. Sarri. You've got some very high quality managers there, and they've gone through them all. As in, where do they go next? If Chelsea were to sack Lampard, where would they go?
This is what I didn't want United to do. I didn't want them to sack Ole Gunnar Solskjaer just for another big name, which is why I didn't want him to sack him for Pochettino. Because it's pointless to move from big name to big name to big name if you're not going to give him the time to do anything. But at the same time, when they got Solskjaer in, it was like, okay, this is the one we're going to stick with for a bit. Whether it's good or bad, we're going to go with Solskjaer. I thought, okay, this is a bit, I'm not sure. And then he's turned out okay-ish. Chelsea, it's like, they've done the same thing United did, where they're sacking all the good managers and they get some guy who used to play for them, and it's not working. But it's just like, it just feels a little bit too little too late. I'm sure if you kept a Mourinho, at some point you'd turn it round. I know obviously players can always get a little bit ill-tempered with a manager. Same for Di Matteo. You just get these managers, Ancelotti. It's like, give them a little bit of time to actually implement something, then see what happens. Lampard, they're giving him the opportunities to implement something, and he can't do anything. I feel like we're taking too much time up on Chelsea here, because I'm just absolutely levering into that Lampard. But
I'll just say one thing and then we can move on. But I think, for me, the most bizarre one out of all of those was how quickly Sarri left. 1 season, and he was like, "No, I'm out." And I think he realised actually that maybe a little bit of a poison chalice, really. But yeah, it's a shame that. I'm saying this as an outsider, as in I haven't watched Chelsea week in, week out. Perhaps if there were any Chelsea fans listening, they would argue and say, actually, no, it was right that Sarri left. But from outside looking in, it seems a little bit weird how he just ended up going for no reason apart from the fact that he had enough. There we are. We'll leave you now, Chelsea and Chelsea fans. We've had our little rant. Man City.
I reckon they're back to their best.
Yeah?
Yeah. They won their last 4. They're unbeaten in their last 11 games. They've got the best defensive record this season. And they've only conceded more than 1 goal once this season. And that was way back in September when they lost 5-2 to Leicester. They properly dismantled Chelsea. And it just feels like they're gearing up. The cogs are turning and they're about to start the great pursuit of reclaiming the Premier League trophy. I reckon they could be in with a very good shout this year.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if I would say City are back to their best. I certainly think...
It depends what their best is, because is it on performances or is it on the results? Because, I mean, for sure they've dominated teams in a much dirtier fashion, but...
And do you know what? I was watching somebody yesterday and I think... I think it's a good point. I think, the fact that Liverpool for a little while hadn't dropped many points. I think now that Liverpool have started to drop a few points, I think City are probably looking at it and going... Because I think for the past couple of seasons, the bar has been so ridiculously high that it was almost like as soon as you lost a game, there was almost that little switch and it was like, oh, we could lose the league because of that.
Yeah,
because the standards were so crazy.
But now that they're not losing games and everything's starting to drop points, it's almost like, hang on, even though we got 3 losses, we're not out of the Premier League race yet.
That's what I mean. So, I think that perhaps there's been a little bit of a psychological release from City's front. Perhaps, it's no longer a case of they think, oh, well, we've lost a game, that's the league gone. They think, well, we just go again next game. One game at a time. So I think that might be playing into City's little purple patch, if you want to call it that. But they're doing well, City. Like you've put your unbeaten in their last 11 games in all competitions. I
just feel like Guardiola's found his formula again. He's starting to get the best out of his players. It just feels a little bit more Man City. You know what I mean? I'd love to see the Man City team of 2-3 years ago playing all the time, because they just ruined. They were humiliating teams on the regular.
Yeah,
it was a good watch. They really knew how. It was good football. So it was a little bit of disappointment to see them slump last year and to the start of this year. But it's just nice to see them have a bit more confidence about it. They can rely on their defence for a change since company.
Well, I was about to say, it seems like they've finally got somebody to go next to Laporte in Ruben Diaz, obviously when they're both fit. I think that was part of City's big issue last year. It wasn't necessarily that they couldn't score goals. It's just that defensively they were just a little bit wobbly.
Well, to be fair, Laporte's been injured again this year. It's back to Stones, isn't it? I just quite like to see John Stones' revival. He's been in my fantasy team, and he's been a beauty. Yeah, absolute beauty in my team.
Well, but that's the thing, though, isn't it? As in, if there's anything that I'm learning this season, and I'm sure City fans learned last season, is that you have to have more than one world-class centre-half.
Mm-hmm.
You can't just have the one, because as soon as that one gets injured, you're struggling a little bit. So I think, they finally... Well, I say finally, they may well have found their man in Diaz, and assuming that Laporte and Diaz are both fit, that's a bit of an ominous pairing to be going up against.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, speaking of defenders and centre-backs in particular,
yes.
Liverpool are starting Henderson and Fabinho this evening against Southampton, who they're currently losing against as we are recording. But they've got Nat Phillips and Reece Williams on the bench. Is the defensive problems solely on the schedule, or is a little bit of blame on Klopp and or whoever makes the decisions on the transfers? Because if you're going into this game, and to be fair, they're down 3 centre-backs, they're all injured, and your next 2 are both on the bench in favour of Henderson and Fabinho playing back there, are you not a little bit short-changed going into the season? If you know that, well, even if just one of them gets injured, throughout a season, there's no way those 2 can play for the whole season, and if you're not trusting in those youth players, what's the point in not buying more centre-backs at an earlier stage?
I'll put it to you this way. If Harry Maguire and Eric Bailly both got injured and Lindelof got injured, who would United be playing as centre-half?
They'd be playing Marcus Rojo, Phil Jones, and or Timothy Fosu-Mensah.
Yeah, there you go.
Well, to be fair though, I'd happily have... I know there's always the jokes about Phil Jones, because he does make some erratic decisions. But
I'd rather Henderson... I'd rather Henderson at centre-half than Phil Jones.
Yeah,
and
probably,
that's not even a joke.
Yeah, I'd probably agree with you there, but I'd rather Phil Jones at centre-back than Nat Phillips or Reece Williams, because I just think there's too much trust in... Well, they've got too little trust, but also you're putting too much on two young guys when you've got, you know, Marcus Rojo who's been in the World Cup final, and a Phil Jones who's played under an Alex Ferguson. He's been a long stay. You know, I know obviously he's not particularly great, but I mean, if the worst comes to worst, United could even bring Chris Smalling back from his loan at Roma, isn't it? Is he still on loan there?
I think he's permanent now.
Is he permanent? Never mind then. But
I mean,
there's at least 5 centre backs on that team. I know obviously the caliber's different to Liverpool, but surely
I kind of agree with you. I think, you know, we were discussing this before we started recording. I think, and I said this to you. I said I'm going to word this carefully. I think the fact that they didn't replace Lovren was a mistake. Mm-hmm. I think selling Lovren was the correct thing to do, but I think not buying somebody, even if it was somebody fairly young, I think not buying somebody in seems a little, in hindsight, seems a little bit unusual. You know, and I think...
I mean, even when you look at Man City from last year, you go, well, they lose Laporte, and... Well, I think, did they lose Otamendi or Stones at some point? It was either that or one of them fell out of favour. Sure. But instantly they were looking at Fernandinho. And it was like, well, this, you know what I mean? If you're already dropping that quickly down today, they're like, well, we need to bolster. And they did bolster this year. They bought Ruben Diaz. And it was like, well, there we go. There we go. You fix the problem. But I don't know. Even if you're not buying the same calibre, you've got to buy a bit of experience.
Yeah. Yeah, but you got to get somebody.
Because it's no good just chucking Henderson and Fabinho there saying they're better than some of the options at other teams, because then you leave your midfield shortchanged. It's like, it doesn't quite make sense.
Well, but this is the thing. Liverpool nowadays have an abundance of, you know, as in they're playing Henderson as centre half. They've still managed to field tonight Wijnaldum, the Ox, and Thiago as their midfield. So I think that's part of the thinking behind it, in that our midfield nowadays is absolutely stacked.
And to be fair though, they'll run around all the time. But what happens after them three? Like, because you know what I mean?
Yeah.
If you're then playing two midfielders at centre-back, 3 midfielders in midfield, it's like, what, you're going to need like 8 midfielders at this rate just to make sure that you've got defensive cover and enough stamina.
One thing I would say is, you know, like last season, Laporte got injured very early on and he was out for the majority of the season. The same has happened to Liverpool, but with both of their starting centre-halves, which I think, you know, although similar to City, to lose both of your starting centre-halves to long-term injury at basically the same time is unfortunate.
Very unfortunate.
And I think another thing that is unfortunate, and perhaps Liverpool should have taken into account more seriously, is the fact that as good as Joel Matip is, he is horrendously injury-prone.
Yeah.
Which means that, you know, like literally, Matip plays a game and is then injured for 2. And then he plays a game and then he's injured for 2. And you're like, well, if that's how he's going to be, you've got to get someone else. You can't... Which is why I think Lovren managed to stay around for as long as he did, in all honesty. And
yeah, you look like Man United, and it's like, okay, obviously the calibre of the defence isn't the same, but if you lose one guy to injury at Liverpool, you're instantly playing your only centre-backs that you trust every single game, every minute for the rest of the season, and they can't get injured because you don't trust the next guy up. But then you go to United, they lose one guy, they've still got 4 centre-backs that you'd... As much as I know you don't like Phil Jones, and Marcus Rojo probably is a little bit out of favour, you'd at least have them in your team to stop a defensive crisis. And it's like, you know what I mean? And even if you lose 2, you go, well, you've still got 3 left. It's like, you're unfortunate if you get 3 injuries, but then in fact you've still got 2 remaining. But Liverpool have had 3 injuries, and it's like, We don't trust anybody else. I mean, I'm surprised they haven't signed someone already in this window.
I mean, I think it's unfair to say that he doesn't trust either of the other two, because let's not forget, up until now, apart from when Joel Matip has actually been fit to play, the partnership has been Fabinho with Nat Phillips or Reece Williams.
Mm-hmm.
That has been, so I don't think it's a case he doesn't trust them. I think there's a little bit of a psychological thing to take them out of the firing line.
But the thing is, I don't think Solskjaer would ever go, let's put two CDMs at centre-back over Phil Jones and Marcus Rojo. Like, I think he's got more trust. Well, he trusts that five, which they've got at centre-back, a lot more than Klopp seems to be trusting these guys. I wasn't saying maybe he doesn't trust them, but the fact that if one guy gets an injury, then all of a sudden you've either got to always pair one experienced with one inexperienced, or you're going to have games where you're having two inexperienced guys, which Klopp doesn't seem happy to do. It's just a strange one for me, really. I just can't really understand. Surely somebody in a boardroom went, hang on, we've only got 3 centre-backs that we actually like.
Well, this is the thing. I think in January... Look, I trust Klopp. The fact you look at the signings that Klopp has made, and they've, apart from maybe one or two, they've all been outstanding. I do think we need to sign a centre-half in January. You know, when you're resorting to playing, I can see why he's done it tonight, because Nat Phillips and Reece Williams, they're youth players, they're not senior players. It's as simple as that. You know, it's one thing playing, you know, like United played Greenwood. It's one thing doing that with a winger. For a centre-half, it's a different kettle of fish. You can't be throwing in young players at centre half if you want to win. If you want to be challenging for the league, it's as simple as that. Mm-hmm. But I think when you get into the point when you're having to play Henderson and Fabinho as your two centre halves, you need to sign a centre half. It's as simple, even if it's one. So you're playing Fabinho with somebody else, you know. But I think when you're having to play two of your central midfielders as centre back, that's a little bit bonkers. But yeah, we'll see how it goes. So I guess in summary, I think there was perhaps a little bit of naivety in putting so much trust in Matip when he's so injury prone, and I think they made a mistake in not replacing Lovren with somebody. However, I do think they've been very unfortunate with the injuries they've had to their top two centre halves.
Yeah, unfortunate, but foolish at the same time to.
Well, you say that though. When was the last time that United had their two best centre halves?
No, I understand
for a full
that.
Season?
No, I understand that. That's unlucky, but it's foolish to only have 3 centre backs. Like, you should never really be in a situation where you're looking at your centre back options and you're saying, I don't quite trust those two. You know what I mean? Just as
in normal circumstances, yes, but when
the thing is, even if all 3 of United's best 3 centre backs go down injured, I'd still trust Phil Jones and Marcus Rojo to muddle together and get through.
Oh, I'm not sure I would see. That's the thing.
I think there's a stigma about Phil Jones. He's not great, but
to be honest with you,
he just makes funny faces. I think that's the only thing about him.
But in this, I think I would be just as concerned about Marcus Rojo, because he seems to get as many red cards as he does interceptions and tackles.
That is false narrative. Marcus Rojo has never had a red card for Manchester United.
What about before Manchester United?
Who cares? That's almost a decade ago now. I'm looking up now. 100% he has not had a red card for Manchester. Or if he has, he's had his first recently. There's no word of a lie. He's got an incredible record of not getting bookings. So it's a stigma. It is. These are stigmas people put out there. He is by all means a thug on the pitch, but he's not one.
Right then. Well, in that case, he gives away fouls then.
It's not. Yeah, but these are things. These are just stigmas. He's still a good defender.
Is he? Then why doesn't he play?
Because we've got better options. But the thing is, we have got better options.
Oh yeah, Lindelof and Maguire absolutely lethal.
The stigma it is. That's
right,
a
here
good
we go.
defence.
Here we go. This is Marcus Rojo's defensive record. In 76 appearances, he's been part of a team that's conceded 58 goals.
To be fair, majority of those are under David Moyes and the Louis van Gaal era, which wasn't a particularly great era for us.
How many fouls do you reckon he's got?
Probably quite a few.
81. He's got more fouls than he has appearances for Manchester United.
Tactical fouls. Fabinho fouls people all the time. It's tactical fouls.
Yeah, but he's not known for it.
Oh, I'll be honest. Every time I watch Liverpool, I notice how many fouls Fabinho gives away. It's just that he gets away with them and he never gets booked for them. It's an art form. It is. South American players have an art form of being able to foul players and not get bookings for them. They just do it in
How many appearances do you think Marcos Rojo has in, let's say, from 2017 till now?
Not many, I don't imagine.
No, it's not many. It's like 21.
But that's because we didn't need him. We've got 3 other guys and he's probably a little bit out of favour. But the point of what I'm saying is, United have 5 centre-backs that if they turned up on a weekend, I wouldn't... obviously, you wouldn't be 100% happy, but you're not looking at it going, I'm really, really worried. Whilst Liverpool have 3 centre-backs, and if just one of them gets injured, every other weekend you're going up and saying there is a direct weakness there that someone's going to try and exploit because they are not an experienced player.
because all 3 of them are injured at the same time.
No, I get that. But if even just one, the other 2 can't play every minute. So by law, they'll have to. You know what I mean? They'll have to.
No, but then
rest
you
for some
can't play
games.
Fabinho as centre half. I don't think it's unreasonable to be playing Fabinho at centre half. Clearly, he can play there, and he's been arguably one of our best players this season, playing out of position. Clearly, Fabinho can play there. I think that the issue lies that Liverpool have been extremely unfortunate to have lost their starting 2 centre halves, both to season-long injuries. It's one thing if you'd lost, like, say, Van Dijk to 3 months, or you'd lost Joe Gomez to even 5 months, but to lose both of them for basically the whole duration of the season, because then the problem is then players like Matip do become more at risk because they're having to play so often. When you're kind of interchanging them, swapping them in and out, the risk of injury plummets. Whereas all of a sudden, when you're having to play, because basically what happens is, as soon as Van Dijk and Gomez get injured for the whole season, your bench centre-halves, for want of a better word, become your number 1 centre-halves, and everyone moves up a tier. So I don't think...
No, I get what
I get what you're saying.
I'm getting what you're saying, where you're saying, it's unheard of to get all those injuries. But what I'm saying is, it only takes one injury at Liverpool to instantly be in a defensive crisis where they've only got a very small amount of options. Whilst a lot of other clubs have at least 4 or 5 options. You look at Chelsea, you've got Kurt Zouma, Thiago Silva, Andreas Christensen, just to name a few. And Rudiger's there. I know, obviously, some people don't like some of those guys, but you look at them and you go, well, at least there's options. Whilst when you go to Liverpool, you lose 3, you're instantly like, this is, touch and go as to who they're going to be playing on the weekend.
There we are. Right, let's move on from Liverpool. We'll talk about Celtic Rangers now, because it was the Old Firm derby on the weekend. Rangers are now 19 points clear at the top of the Scottish League. It's worth saying that Celtic have, I think it's 3 games in hand. But even so...
Yes, but yeah, they'll still be 10 points behind, even if they win all 3.
Yes. That's a pretty hefty swing. Considering this would have been, Celtic were hoping to go for a 10th consecutive Scottish Premier League title. I think this weekend's result is basically wrapped it up.
It's wrapped it up, yeah.
As in, I think basically if Celtic had any chance of
catching,
they would have had to have done something pretty major this weekend. They would have had to have won. Basically, Celtic would have they had to have won this weekend to have a chance. I don't know about you. I think there are multiple causes for the kind of swing in fortunes, because Celtic have dominated for many years. Rangers got relegated for financial reasons. But yeah, there are many factors in play. Changes of managers. Gerrard seems to have turned Rangers into genuine contenders. He's kind of backed them. Out of interest, if Rangers were to be plopped into the Premier League right now, where do you think they'd finish?
Rangers...
now.
I think they're about the level of... I was going to say Brighton, but I think that's too kind. I don't think that's disrespectful either, because you look at that team. I can't name, apart from Morella's, who played up top, and I don't even think he plays them anymore because he keeps getting red cards. But I mean, you look at that Premier League table. I mean, like I was saying before, I think Arsenal can beat Rangers. That's not like Arsenal. And I didn't think Arsenal could beat 13 of the other teams in the league. So they're instantly in the bottom 5. And I mean, Brighton play a brand of football which I think only City are the only other team that is so rigid in their structure, because Brighton love to play possession football. So that's why I said I probably wouldn't put them. I'd probably put them below Brighton, but they probably finish 16th. In a Premier League season. And for Celtic, up to this season, they probably would finish above Brighton. But now I'd say they're probably sitting in that 18th position. I don't think Scottish football has a scratch on the Premier League. You know what I mean? If they were to ever merge them, those two clubs would very quickly turn into a championship team. You know, they'd be battling out for playoffs every year. But yeah.
There we are. Anyway. Absolutely brutal. Right, we should probably move on to Shock of the Week, because we are getting... We've talked a lot.
We talked about probably Lampard and Liverpool, probably about for 45 of the 1 hour 30 of the way through that we are. But I've been enjoying it all the same.
Basically, if you're not a Chelsea fan... Well, actually saying that, if you are a fan of not liking Chelsea... or you're a Liverpool fan, then listen.
Yeah.
If you're not, then
well, that's
there are other podcasts available.
Chelsea have no fans.
No,
they do.
That's the final nail in the coffin.
Yeah, that was Arsenal.
Right, Shock of the Week. My first one is Alex Albon. I found this out today. Is going to be racing in DTM.
Yeah, you'll have to tell me what that is, because I haven't got a clue.
Now, I'm pretty sure... Let me have a look. I'm pretty sure it's like German touring car racing.
Mm-hmm.
Which is...
To be fair, what else is he going to do? Because it doesn't seem that a reserve driver ever gets to drive the chance to actually drive a car.
No, that's true.
Stoffel Van Dorn was just like, am I going to drive a Mercedes? Oh no, Russell is. Do I get to have the Williams? No.
DTM, Deutsche Tourenwagen Masters.
Oh, of course.
It's a touring car series. Yeah, so it's touring car, basically. I guess it's a bit of a weird one, because generally the way these things go with sport is... not with sport, with Formula 1, is that unless you're someone like Alonso, when you leave, that's kind of it.
Yeah.
Now, Albon, so I'll dissect it a little bit more. Albon is still going to be one of Red Bull's kind of reserve drivers, but when he's not needed for that, then he's going to be racing in DTM alongside somebody else.
But
so he's not going.
If he does well in this DTM, whatever it is... Would he just stay there? Because you see the guys who jump over to the Formula E, and they do well, and obviously the Formula 1 teams don't actually want them back, but it doesn't look like any of them are ever going to leave it, because it's like, well, Formula E could take off, and, you know, you're basically the Michael Schumacher of it at this stage if you win 2 or 3, because it's a new thing. No one's ever won anything in it. So, you know, it's probably worth them sticking around what they're doing. As long as you're driving somewhere, I mean... The F1's probably the most volatile place to drive, because, you know, one bad season you're out. But, you know, no one's kicking you out of a Formula E team, because they're pretty grateful that you're even driving in it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There we are. Right, what was your shock of the week?
My shock of the week is that yesterday, in probably one of the worst acts of sportsmanship I'd ever seen, but the Eagles... The Philadelphia Eagles, who were already eliminated from playoff contention, were playing the Washington football team. The Washington football team needed to win to get into the playoffs. And the New York Giants were hoping the Eagles could beat the Washington football team, because if they did, that would mean they got into the playoffs. And it was close. It was 17-14 in Washington's favour. And the Eagles quarterback was doing just fine. And then the Eagles coach, Doug Peterson, decided, you know what? I'm going to bench him for the remainder of this game, and I'm going to play this completely unknown quarterback who's never going to quarterback for the Philadelphia Eagles, on a probably ever. And they went, yeah, I'm just going to bench him for him, and basically just tanked the rest of the game, meaning the Washington football team sort of just walked away with it and won the game. And the Giants just missed out on playoff football purely because the Eagles coach was like, yeah, I don't really care. I'd rather lose the game because I get a better draft pick. And it was like, nobody goes out there to play to lose except the Philadelphia Eagles. They literally went out there, even though the players wouldn't say it, the coach went out there with the mindset of, well, if we're, unless it's I can't imagine a scenario where he actually would have kept the starting quarterback in, because, I mean, the only situation where you either bench your quarterback if they're playing badly, or if you're winning by so many, it doesn't matter. And it's like, well, this is a tight game. This is the one you keep him in for. It's a rookie quarterback anyway. And he went, yeah, we'll just get rid of him and put in some completely unknown guy because I want to lose the game. It's like, gosh, it was just disgusting.
Absolutely brutal. Right, on that note, NFL, the weekend's results. Let's begin the rundown.
Yeah. So the Ravens beat the Bengals. That meant they were into the playoffs. They clinched the number 5 seed. That was them done and dusted. That means they will play the winner of the AFC South in the playoffs. The winner of the AFC South was the Titans because they beat the Texans. So that meant they clinched the 4th seed, and that was the end of that. The 2 and 3 seed were wrapped up because the Bills and the Steelers both won. Oh no, only the Bills won, but it didn't matter anyway because the Steelers they had to hope the Bills lost to do it, and the Bills absolutely dominated the Dolphins 56-26.
And the Dolphins, they're going to win the Super Bowl.
Well, I don't know about that, but to be fair, the Dolphins had the easiest way to get into the playoffs, because even if they lost, every single other team needed to win for them to miss out. Right. So they were probably the odds-on favourite to make it, but they didn't because every other team did win their game. The Colts beat the Jags to get the 7th seed, almost getting the 4th seed, because they were up against the Titans kind of to win it, but the Titans won, so that didn't matter. And the Browns somehow beat the Steelers. I think the Steelers were playing their backup quarterback, so that was kind of why that happened. So the Browns managed to get in, despite it was looking like they were going to do a classically Browns thing, and despite being at one stage 91% chance of making it in, were almost going to miss out. They didn't. So the playoffs to the AFC are now, the Chiefs get the bye, so they'll play the lowest remaining team after this next round of games. Titans play the Ravens. That's probably the tightest game of the lot.
I was going to say.
Don't be surprised to see the Ravens win that, even though I think they had a worse division and overall record than the Titans. You've got the Bills against the Colts. I'd love to see the Colts win that game, because
just
not only does it, not just that, but also because the Colts are the 7th seed. So if the Colts win, automatically they will play the Chiefs, and I 100% back the Chiefs to beat the Colts. So I kind of want them to do that. And then you've got the Browns against the Steelers, which is great fun because those teams are so tightly matched, but the Browns always seem to lose, that it's almost a little bit comedic. Then in the NFC, as we mentioned before, the NFC East, the Giants beat the Cowboys, meaning that the Washington football team had to be the Eagles if they were to win the East, which they did. So the Washington football team gets the 4th seed over there. The Packers beat...
What was the Washington football team's record out of interest?
7-9. So they were a losing team. That's shocking.
Lovely.
There's no chance a team should get into the playoffs with a losing record, but that's the NFL for you.
That's another story.
Packers beat the Bears. That meant the Packers claimed the 1 seed, so it meant the Saints and the Seahawks games didn't matter. They got the 2 and 3 seeds. The Rams played the Cardinals. Now, the Bears had one more hope to get in, and it was that the Rams could beat the Cardinals. And if the Rams beat the Cardinals, the Bears would make it in as the 7th seed.
Right.
And that happened. The Cardinals missed out on the playoffs because the Rams beat them. The Rams claimed the 6th seed. The 5th seed was already wrapped up because Tampa Bay had already wrapped that up about 2 weeks ago, I think.
Yeah.
And yeah, so it was a bit simpler over in the NFC, and that was that. So now you've got the Washington football team playing Tampa Bay this in the Wildcard. And I think everyone expects Tampa Bay to win that.
Yeah.
You've got the Saints playing the Bears, and
surely you'd back the Saints for that, wouldn't you?
I can't see anyone other than the Saints winning that. And then you've got the Seahawks against the Rams.
That's a tricky one.
That's amazing because, I mean, the Seahawks beat the Rams, which is why the Seahawks
are there.
Yeah, they're the home team. And there was such a tightly matched game. But to be fair, the Rams are down a quarterback. Their quarterback's got a broken thumb, so wouldn't be surprised to see the Seahawks win there either.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And then Green Bay's got the bye week. So,
yeah,
who knows what happens there? They'll just play the lowest ranked team, which at this stage probably is going to be Tampa Bay. That's a tasty game. Tampa Bay pretty much dominated Green Bay earlier in the season, beaten by about 30 points. But no one ever mentions that because it's not in Aaron Rodgers' favour to say that. And everybody wants Aaron Rodgers to win the MVP for some reason.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's an interesting one. Look at there's some pretty tasty matchups there, to be fair. Like you said, the Ravens-Titans is... that's a pretty meaty one. In AFC.
To be fair, none of them scream flashy game because they are just so many run-heavy teams in this that it's not great entertainment to watch unless you're really interested as to what's going on. But they just ground it out. It's proper NFL there where two teams just run at each other. And
to be honest with you, the Bills-Colts is looking pretty tasty as well, to be honest.
The Colts seem to be a team that found form. And I don't know if the flame's starting to flicker because they are still a genuinely good team. But I don't know if they've quite got... Like, the Bills just do look like a team reborn. I still think the Chiefs will beat them if it comes to it. But thing is, the Ravens look like a team that could never be beaten last season, and they went out in the first round to the lowest ranked team. So, who knows? Who knows what will happen?
Who knows? Yeah, and I mean, so you've got that on the AFC, and then the NFC, you've got... I mean, you'd assume the Buccaneers would win, wouldn't you? Isn't that should be fairly...
And I think I'd love to see Tampa Bay beat the Packers because...
Yeah, I would.
It would just be such a ironic set of circumstances that Green Bay, who... They've had such an easy schedule, I think. And not like ridiculously, but every good team they've played, they've kind of lost to. So, you know what I mean? Tampa Bay demolished them earlier in the season. So it would just be a great turn for the Bucs where the number one seed goes out against a team and they'd already lost to them once and it's like, this could be funny.
So, assuming that you'd have the Buccaneers winning over the Washington football team, you'd have the Saints beating the Bears, and you'd probably have the Seahawks beating the Rams. Who's the lowest seed out of those then?
Tampa Bay.
So then, wow, okay.
Because Tampa Bay are a wild card team. Like, even if the Washington football team won, let's say the Rams won, even though they've got a better record than Washington, they're still a lower seed. By virtue of division winners always getting a little bit of kudos, almost like, you guys get the home games. So it's an interesting one.
Very meaty. It's looking meaty for the playoffs.
Very.
So is that next weekend that the playoffs start?
Yeah, it's right.
Wow,
it just comes.
It's coming around quick, isn't it?
You get to week 14 and you're like, playoff football's around the corner. I mean, the Chiefs have to win 3 more games, and they win the Super Bowl.
Wow.
That's crazy to think. I mean, I'm just going to jet it out in my mind now. I think they'll probably end up playing probably the Ravens. And that's not nice. I hope we win that. And if we do win that, they're going to have to play probably the Bills. And that's not a nice game. And if we do win that, you're probably playing either Tampa Bay, the Saints. Yeah, I'd probably say the Saints are going to beat the Seahawks. I'm probably going to say that. So it'll be Saints versus Tampa Bay for the NFC Championship. I'm probably going to be the Saints for the first time in ages because they've been trying to get there. They keep failing at the last hurdle. But Chiefs against Saints in the Super Bowl, that could be tasty. And the Chiefs have already beaten the Saints, so, we're going to run it back. We're going to win our second Super Bowl in a row. Not been done since 2000 and something. So,
yeah.
Yeah.
Are we done with NFL talk, or there's one more bit on the notes here that you've put?
Oh, yeah.
But the Chiefs' dominance.
Yeah, so Patrick Mahomes, he wasn't the MVP favourite at the beginning of the season. Russell Wilson was. Then everyone realised Russell Wilson is good, but he can't compete with Mahomes for what Mahomes does on a weekly occurrence. Because what Mahomes does is incredibly spectacular. Almost in the same vein as a Michael Jordan. Now, Michael Jordan only got 5 MVP titles in his career, despite playing for 15 seasons. And Patrick Mahomes is no longer the odds-on favourite for the MVP. It is now Aaron Rodgers of the Green Bay Packers. And, wow, Aaron Rodgers has the best group of guys in front of him, best offensive line, that is. So he has all the time in the world to throw the ball. No one's pressuring him. And he's not got bad wide receivers. He's got one insane one, and then a couple of other decent guys, but he's also got a really good running game. Now, the Chiefs have a rubbish offensive line, so Mahomes is always pressured.
Yeah, he's always having to backtrack, Mahomes. Having to move.
They've got no running game, because it just doesn't seem... They never seem to get more than 100 yards running in a game. And his wide receivers are very good, to be fair. But there's a lot more that Mahomes has to do, because you can't just have fast guys running around and him just fling a ball, because they're not going to have enough time to get separation by the time he's getting pressured. Surely Mahomes has got to win the MVP. I think Mahomes is the MVP, and I think people just become a little bit numb to it because of how good he is. But yeah, that was just like a passing comment I wanted to put. I wanted to put that Mahomes should win the MVP, and people are just numb to it.
Yeah, I mean, could it be a factor that he's fallen foul to his own
high
standards?
So
because
sensational the first season. That everyone's like, oh, he...
well, and it's almost like you just expect it from Mahomes now because he's so consistently good. It's almost like, in a weird way, because he's so good, it doesn't stand out.
Yeah.
Because you just expect it.
He dominated teams earlier in the season. Before teams went out of form, like the Texans, who played opening night, it was a decent team back then. We played the Ravens before they went for their little mid-season flop. He played the Patriots, and to be fair, he didn't have the best of games. But the thing is, he got to the week 16, and he had a record of 14-1. They finished with 14-2, but they rested all their guys. It's like, well, Aaron Rodgers was 12-3, and it's like, well, you can't hold it against Mahomes that he didn't play the last week of the season, so they're not, you know what I mean? It looks bad on him for the MVP. And it's he's a victim of his own success. It's like, well, he's made sure that the Chiefs don't lose on so many occasions. You think against the Chargers, he came all the way back from quite a deficit to go on and win that game. And it's like, well, it's because...
Well, and there was a game... What game was it? Not this weekend, but who did we play last weekend? The Chiefs?
The Falcons.
So the Falcons?
Yeah, we played the Falcons and narrowly won.
Yeah, that was it. And I'm not being funny. He basically just won us the game.
Yeah, he just starts flinging the ball around. It was like, let's stop running the ball and let's actually win this game, eh? And that's what they went out and did.
There we are. Right, should we finish off with our stat of the week?
Yes.
Shall I?
Don't mind.
I'll go first.
Cool.
Chelsea have 3 fewer points after 17 league games than they did last season at this point. Whilst in the Premier League era, the Chelsea have never finished higher than 6th when amassing a maximum of 26 points at this stage in the campaign.
I didn't realise that they've never finished higher than 6th when amassing. Wow. So then they're going to miss out on Champions League
when they've been at this number of points at this point in the campaign, they've never finished higher than 6th.
That's embarrassing.
It's not ideal, is it?
Small club mentality, that is. My stat is that this Arsenal team that is reborn, some say, because they beat West Brom 4-0, was it? Was it 4 or 5-0?
Yes, 4.
Well, those 4 goals they scored against West Brom amount for 20% of all of their goals this season. So, as spectacular as they are, 80% of their goals are scored in the previous 16 weeks. And 20% have scored in 1. So, I mean, that just shows how...
Wow. Yeah, that's...
They're just...
That's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah, they're just polishing a bad team at the moment with some...
Wow, a fifth of their goals in one game.
A fifth of their goals in one game. And that's not to say, they were amazing in one game. It's just that it was so bad for so long, and I don't think they're a new team. I don't think they're a reborn team because of it. And
on that note, that is the end of this episode of the Down to the Wire podcast. Thank you very much for listening. For those who regularly listen, we are very grateful. Me and Jack are enjoying. Well, I'm saying me and Jack. I'm certainly enjoying doing this. I think I'm right saying that you are as well.
Yeah.
If you listen on you, say again. Sorry, you deal.
I deal with it. Yeah.
I just go with it. Jack pesters me all the time to do it, and I just go with it. If you are listening on YouTube, why not subscribe? You'll get notifications when we upload a podcast. We are on Spotify as well, under the same name, Down to the Wire Podcast. If you didn't know that, perhaps you prefer to listen on Spotify, a bit more convenient. And we're also on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Breaker, Pocket Casts.
Yeah.
Have I got them all?
I think so. I haven't checked, but I think so.
It's taken 9 weeks, but I finally got all of them in the end of the podcast.
You'd get them.
So there we are. Thank you all for listening, and me and Jack shall see you or speak to you next week.
There we go.